Oh, we got one of those. We're
We
live at
got one of
11:05
those. All right.
on BC. This is Dr. Clark.
Jim Clark.
This is Trinity Street Rods. And I wasn't kidding. We were talking about your 56 Chevy.
Right.
I wasn't kidding when I was talking about your Packard.
Right.
So we first really talked about it in the, what do you call it, the prep room or?
Yeah, in pre-op area and surgery.
Pre-op, you're an anesthesiologist.
Right,
My
exactly.
daughter's fixing to go to surgery, so
Right,
of course
right.
we're not talking about any of that.
Right,
we're talking cars.
Right.
And you had a fuel injection.
Right. I had this old 2-port fuel injection setup that had never been used. I bought for a 33 Ford fiberglass Roadster street rod project that I never got around to doing. I didn't have time. Anyway, I sold that, and the guy wanted to build the car, the 33 Ford. He did not want the fuel injection setup. He wanted to go old school with a set of dual carbs. So I kept it. I thought, one of these days this project is going to come along and we'll be able to use it. So the Packard came along. And the Packard actually has a high performance 350 in it.
And you told me that.
Carbureted.
And when you told me that, I was thinking, because I knew the car.
Right.
You didn't put a Chevy motor in a Packard.
Right.
But we're just talking, we'll go over this a little bit. 'Cause
Right.
you know your Packard.
Right.
And this is a modern Packard. This is
It's
a
a modern
modern
Packard.
fiberglass car that's probably
Right.
drives better and nicer
Right.
than a. And the injection system was from a company called
First.
First.
Yeah. Right.
And it wasn't just First. You had the first prototype of First.
Right.
And you had to tune stuff and.
Right. Right.
So anyway, it still runs. You
Well,
drove it out
that's
here.
great, yeah. Of course, I didn't know how to put all this together. I had the parts, and I talked to Bob, and he said, "Yeah, we can tackle that project, and we can make it work." So I brought her over here, and it's been a long time, but they got it all together. And I mean, it starts good, it runs good. It's probably the best thing I ever did for the old Packard, is do that. The Ford had a big 4-barrel Harley on it that did not perform well, guzzled gas terribly, but this is definitely a big improvement.
Would you mind show us the car?
Sure.
Yeah, and tell us about it. This is an awesome car.
Well, this car was made in 1988, so legally it is an antique car.
Apparently.
but it is a exact fiberglass and metal model of a 33 Packard rumble seat roadster. It was made by a fellow by the name of Dwight Bond in Gibbon, Nebraska, and they had Bond Motor Works out there. They sold street rod bodies, and still do, I think. But Dwight Bond had a real fascination and love for Packards. He made several different models of 33 and 34 Packards, but the rumble seat roadster is my favorite. He actually made 8 of these turnkey cars for different people, and that's all he made. And in addition to that, he sold kits and reproduction fenders and parts for people who were actually restoring Packards who couldn't find them.
I talked to him after we were working on this.
Right.
It's a beautiful car.
Right.
Now, we were that close to buying the
Right.
company and doing it, but we had so much, and now you got it here again. I'm like, man, do we want to build Packards?
Yeah, I don't know if he sold all that stuff or what. It may still be for sale, but I know he sold the cars that he had.
Sold the 34s and all that stuff.
That he pulled the molds off of.
Mhm.
Right. Yep. So anyway, it's a beauty. It's got a 9-inch Ford rear end on it, and I think a 350 turbo hydromatic. It's got a 350 crate engine in it, and now it's fuel injected. Over the last many years, I have tried to make the car as correct as possible. Some of the stuff that was on it looked great, but if you know Packards, you know it wasn't quite right. For instance, these lights here were specific for 1933 and 34 V12s. If you look at the contour of the lenses, they're V'd just like the radiator. They've got the little crest over the top, just like the radiator. They got a little rib down the back here, and that was specific to 33 and 34.
So radiator finned and turned?
Well, they did originally on the V12s. They did. They had louvers that were thermostatically actuated, so that's how it controlled your temperature going down the road. This one does. These are fixed. These bumpers are unique to all the V12 Packards. They couldn't make them to V12 Packard in 1939, but these actually were hydraulic cylinders, dampered. There's one on each side that have a check valve, and they've got weights that are counterweights, and the idea was it was supposed to provide a torque dampening for the engine when you're going down the highway. Whether it worked or not, I don't know, but the later models after 39, well, I think they actually quit making them in 37, and they just had a regular band bumper on the front. Anyway, this is a V12 bumper. Kind of hard to find, but when you can find one, they're worth the money, and you get them restored, and they look great. Beautiful look. These are pilot light driving lights.
I walked up to it and I was like, your lights are, but then if you look at the wheels are turned slightly this way.
Right.
It's pretty unique.
Yeah, pretty unique. They actually run off the steering sector, and this car has a Chrysler front end under it, so the steering box was not original, and so it took a little thinking to come up with a system of levers and radius arms to make the correct amount of turn when you turn it.
So you put those on.
I put that on.
And got it.
Right. I junked all this stuff together over a period of about 10 years. I was actually working on that when the car was out here before. I didn't have all the parts. But anyway, it's all together now and it's all working.
And wood on the, you got to tell me about
that. Right. A lot of the Packards had wood interior back in the 30s. The V12 Packard and the Super 8s, as an option, had Carpathian elm accents. This is walnut, and I was able to find a guy in England who had a source for buying Carpathian elm veneer, and it took about 6 months or a year, as I recall, to get that stuff because it's kind of rare. They don't cut down these Carpathian elm trees. They're made in the Carpathian Mountains, and somewhere around Czechoslovakia and Romania.
We haven't even got to trigger time yet. All you green people, it's okay. Never mind. It was already fell down, and they just took it off the ground.
It's beautiful stuff. It's got a real nice burl pattern. It is
beautiful.
All the gauges are all electronic gauges in it, but the dash looks very correct.
Got a rumble seat,
and of course it's a convertible. It's manual. Yes, got a rumble seat. It's electric rumble seat.
Electric, that wasn't factory, huh?
No.
We got a rumble seat coming up over here.
There you go. Somebody says, well, how do you get in a rumble seat? Well, you come around the corner here.
Oh, that's a serious step there.
You grab hold of this, you step here, you swing around, you sit down. To add to your comfort, to keep your sweaty arms off the fender, you roll these over the top.
Oh, wow. So this is all factory stuff?
Yeah, all factory stuff. Yeah,
wow.
All factory stuff. Yeah.
Do you know how many of these cars they made?
No, I have no idea. I've got a book on the Packard that'll tell you how many they made for every production year. This is a golf club compartment. This was kind of
seriously.
This was kind of gentleman's sports car. You took this to the country club with you, pop this over, and pull your golf clubs out of here.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what that's for, a golf club compartment. I've added these too. Since the last time you were here, these wing windows. There was a company in Detroit by the name of American Aero. Actually, they were Warren, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And the guy made these reproductions, and actually he made this for me. I always liked the Packard Cormorant. It originally came out with the Goddess of Speed, the donut chaser, and I didn't particularly like that, and so I sold that to a guy who was restoring one, and he wanted one with the donut chaser, and I bought this one from the guy up there at American Aero. So anyway.
So what is it? What is this like? Is this a hot rod?
Well, I guess you could call it a hot rod. I mean,
it's street rod, is it?
That's right.
It's got the best of both worlds. It's like
kind of a resto mod, I think.
It's a resto mod, yeah.
Right.
Yep. Beautiful, and it's what makes it even better is all your personal touches.
I'll tell you a story. When I was a kid, my dad was a real gearhead. He was always working on something. I think because we couldn't afford to buy anything that was nice and new, he was always working on something to keep it on the highway. And one time when I was a little kid, he and I went to a junkyard, and he was finding parts for an old pickup truck. And so I was wandering off in the weeds looking at all the cars in the junkyard. And there were some real classics back then in the 50s that were in junkyards. And I was looking at some big old chrome monster, probably a Buick or a Cadillac or a Pontiac grill. And I turned around, and here was this huge tombstone-shaped radiator on this huge car. And I looked at that thing and I thought, there's really something special about this car, not having any idea what it was. So I got my dad and he got through and we came back and looked at it, and it turned out it was a big old Packard Henny hearse. But it had the Packard front end on it. And I thought, you know, there's just something about the classic looks of that Packard tombstone radiator.
It is.
When you stand here and you look at the front of this car, there's just nothing like it. And I fell in love with the Packard that day. I said, you know what these is, I'm going to have you a Packard.
Well, let's go back to your youth some more. The reason you're here today.
Okay.
So we got, and bring the team in. Where's Jason? Take off.
Yep.
Jordan, come on in here. All right, and we've got the mystery new guy behind the camera here.
Okay, the mystery new
He's
guy.
a city from Texas, and I'm going to give you a clue. It's not Dallas.
Okay.
So we're going to let him guess. I don't know how long it's going to take him to guess who behind the camera is, but he's got a great member. And now you're going to critique me on the team I build here at some point.
Right, exactly.
So he's got good knowledge on electronics, and you can do body work and chassis building. And now we have Jordan. Just got here from California yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Just in time. The earthquake's going to happen, or whatever's going to go on out there.
Yeah.
The tsunami, or the streets are going to catch on fire. I'm not sure. But
one thing about this business, it's kind of an eclectic bunch you put together.
yeah,
You know,
that's
it
true.
really is, because everybody's kind of bonded by the same, you know, by the same general interest in making it all come together. And it takes a lot of people with various, you know, histories and talents to make it all come together.
Well, he was known as the exhaust doctor. So let's show off a couple of these things. You need a little bit of exhaust work.
I will need some exhaust work, right? We're going to go 2 into 1 here off these split headers. And Jason and I have decided that probably the best way to go off those headers is 2 inch into 1 2.5 and go out single out the back. Get the right amount of scavenging and back pressure without taking it to duals, which is what I thought originally. But
That should be pretty easy, considering this is. Well, tell us what this is.
So it's an 8 into 1, so you can run.
But you need to say louder.
It's an 8 into 1, so you can run all your cylinders into one hole. It's the only way to get the most scavenging out of any application that you're trying to get it out of. And you just start out with a jig.
That's
Go
really
from
a
there.
piece of art there. That's amazing.
So now, why aren't you using that one?
Well, for the intended vehicle we were using it on was an LSXR, and we ended up making 3 of these. This one ended up sucking too much. We made one a little bit shorter. It didn't suck enough, so we made one right in between, and that seemed to do the job. I got left over with these 2 that I made, this being one of them.
So how do you determine that engineering-wise that you've got the right amount?
Wild ass guess, sir.
Okay. Is it with dyno information, or do you have some objective way to measure with gauges?
Usually by CFM,
Okay.
desired CFM in the power band.
Okay.
And you just kind of go off of that. The primaries still stay the same, and your exits still the same. It's just the how you get there.
I
is
see.
Really what it boils down to.
Explain to us what scavenging is.
So scavenging, you would run this in on the firing order. So you'd have 1, 3, 4, you know, however it goes. And so as the exhaust pulse goes through one cylinder, it pulls vacuum on the cylinders on each side of it. Well, if this one's about to fire next,
So you
it's
got a
already got a
vortex
vacuum inside that primary, and so when the exhaust valve opens, it'll already be opening into a vacuum, which clears out all your cylinders even better.
Gotcha.
Do they teach that in school?
No.
Okay.
We're having school now. I'm learning. Then,
You watch the toilet long enough.
unless you get to the equator, then it goes the other direction, I believe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this, now, okay, you're explaining this. It's a shock, and I don't like to be dumb, so I listen a lot before I make a comment. I love to surround myself with people that know more than I do. That's even a better thing. So he's telling me all about this shock.
Wow.
So tell me about the shock.
So this is a 16-inch travel shock. You'd see it on stadium trucks, and
Now, see, you cheated. If you just said that with me, I could have went along right away. He's all done with the explanation. I'm like, so we're looking at a stadium truck shock here? So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, it's no problem. So most of the smooth bore shocks, you set up the piston and you get one rate all the time, and that's what you're stuck with. With one of these, you take the smooth bore shock and you drill holes in the amount of adjustments you want per the suspension that you're using, and you set the piston up real solid, so there's no shims or no bypass sleeves inside the piston. And you drill the holes, you weld these Schrader valves on here, and they give you control of that particular section of the shock. So if you're trying to tune in a specific section of your shock, you can get, the sky's the limit on however many you want to put on there and mess with.
And so those are loaded with air then?
Nitrogen, yes sir.
No, it's nitrogen, okay, with the Schrader valves. Gotcha.
Yes sir. And this, like for this one, it's got 2 on compression. So this would provide 1 zone of compression, so your light zone.
Right.
This is another section for your compression, so we'll call that medium. And
Okay.
then after that, you just have your piston in there, and you can set that up to whatever your mean, solid you would want that to be. This one going back this way, it doesn't allow the suspension to jerk on the chassis, so when the wheel comes back off a jump or something like that, it just comes
Gotcha.
out slow instead
Wow.
of yanking on everything.
Ingenious. Of course, it takes a pretty good sized rig to fit this to. Anything like this for smaller cars?
Yes, sir. There actually is.
Are you planning to
Yes.
jump?
This is a 2.5 inch. They go all the way. I've seen them down to 1.5 inch.
Wow.
They're real small.
Wow.
I don't know what the weight ratings on those would be, but certainly not what this one is. This
Amazing.
one will do on all 4 corners, if you used to use it, would do up to about a 5,000 pound vehicle.
Okay.
Well, perfect. I hope you were loud enough for everybody to hear, because that was incredible. I mean,
Right.
we're at the right spot too. This is a prop. This is our bench racing table. So I got an old 50s reproducer so we can sit here and do bench racing.
It's amazing.
That's amazing. But you did some great research. When you told me about it the other day, I'm like, oh great, you saved us a half hour, 45 minutes or an hour. So we're putting injection on here, easy stuff. Holley sniper setup.
Right.
Just go quick on the distributor side of it.
Well, this Holley Sniper fuel injection card, throttle body card, actually will interface with a dual sync type distributor, and Holley makes a couple, and MSD makes one. The problem with this particular 6-cylinder engine is nobody makes the dual sync distributor that will fit this engine. The 216s, the 235s, the 260s with this what was called the stove bolt block are different from the 250s and the 292s that came later. All the distributors that have the capability that I want will only fit the 250s inline 6 and the 292s. So I have already converted this distributor to basically what would be an HEI equivalent by putting a Pertronic setup in it, getting rid of the condenser and the points, and a high output coil. So there's really not much more we can do, but we'll keep looking, and sooner or later somebody may come out with a retrofit, and at that point in
There you
time
go.
we can make that jump. It would be a good thing to have, but we can't do that right now. So we'll just do it what we've done.
So we'll transition into trigger time. How long did it take you to figure that out?
The
Just the
distributor-
information you told us there in about 30 seconds.
Oh, it probably took me about an hour on the phone with one session and another 30 minutes on the phone with a guy at Holley who actually took the time to do the research for me to try to find a solution. He called me back later in the day, very nice fella. He said, I have massaged this thing around as much as I possibly can. I simply cannot find an alternative to what you're doing right now. So he said, something may sooner or later come up available. He said, when it becomes available through Holley, I'll know about it one day before you do. But he said, until then, just stick with what you got.
I've always looked at it this way. There's 2 ways to learn something. One is the hard way,
Yeah,
and one is to learn it from somebody that's been there and done that.
Sure.
And that's not always the best way, but it usually is if you surround yourself with people that know what they're talking about.
right.
Be careful, someone tells you what they know what they're doing, and they don't have a clue, they're just BSing. So,
Right.
in this little video we've done, I don't know, we're maybe 20 minutes, half hour in, a lot of information, a lot to dissolve, but man, this is fun.
Yeah, it is
It's fun. So
It's
for
neat.
trigger time today, I was kind of going down that aisle there. And Peter, now some people don't like this part, so we put it at the end. You can turn this part off. You turn this off. We won't even talk about it. I went back to my fancy hat. I like my fancy hat because
There you go.
this is getting exciting. Anyway, at the end of 2 Peter, it talks about, you therefore, beloved, knowing this beforehand, beware lest you be carried away with the air of lawless men and lose your own stability, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. To him be the glory now and to the day of eternity. Amen. I tell my grandkids all the time, don't believe anything you hear, read, or see. Do your own research.
That's right.
Just because I say it, or doctor, you've done a lot of research, but just because you can't find one, don't mean there's not a distributor for this.
Right.
You've talked to very incredibly smart people in that world, don't mean that there's still not a way to do it.
That's correct.
And there's probably a better way to do that shock, but right now I am baffled how that one even works and why you would use nitrogen instead of compressed air.
Right.
I mean, the best I could do was guess what it was.
I was going to ask. Why you use nitrogen?
Well, exactly. How do you know unless you ask questions?
Sure. Right.
And how did we get to a place in this country where we're not asking questions now?
I know it.
So,
Yeah.
enough for trigger time, and we're going to get going on this. We've turned that over there where the red car is. We're calling that the hot rod hotspot. I've got some flames in the background and stuff. We're going to get a sign. So that one's fixing to go on the road today to drive. And when it gets in the hot rod hotspot, it's like the one we're working on. And guess where this is going this afternoon?
Right.
It's going. We're going to back it up in there, and I want to follow up on this because it's a really cool car. I loved it. I was born in '57, so. And why this car for you?
Well, first car I ever had.
There you go. Back to
When I
our
was 16 years old.
Yep.
And I bought it here in Arkansas. Actually, I have a transplant down here from the Milwaukee area. But I bought this same car, same color combination. However, mine had the small block 265 in it. And I learned everything I know, or a large part of what I know about mechanics, by working on that one and keeping it running. Like so many people, when you get older, you wish you still had that first car that you ever had. And so I decided when I retired, I was going to have another one. And I was fortunate enough to find this one in decent shape. It came out of California originally, and it was bought by a guy in Phoenix, Arizona area who was going to restore it. Actually, he was going to jerk the engine transmission out and do a resto mod, put an LS in it. But he either ran out of money or ran out of time, had too many projects, and I saw it for sale and bought it. Thought I would do the same thing, but then I kind of fell in love with the old 6-cylinder engine. It had plenty of power, and it ran good. And I thought I'll just make this 6-cylinder do all that it can be. And the first thing we're going to tackle here is this carburation setup. Get rid of that old Rochester and turn it into a doorstop, and make it run right with a Holly.
Well, good. And that'll be happening in the next week, and then we'll do air and move.
You bet.
Who knows what kind of exhaust we'll have.
Right.
So until next time.
All right.
I appreciate this. Has been great.
Thank you.
We may make you a regular because people are watching more of this one than they do me. See you later.